So, leadership styles. And whenever we, of course, interact with people, human beings can be pretty chaotic. So, it's useful to have some type of hierarchy where there's someone at the top, whether that's someone who makes most decisions at home or at your local workplace or involved in the government. And there are different ways that people can go about being leaders. Sometimes it's a little bit more vague than you might think. And I'm sure everyone here has worked with somebody that's supposed to have been in charge, but maybe didn't seem like it at some point. So there are different ways that leaders go about doing things. And the first way I want to talk about is the option of how they interact with the people that are subordinate to them. And there are basically three major ways. There's more than that, but there's three major ways that we categorize how people lead when it comes to how they interact with their subordinates. So they can be autocratic, is one way, which is spelled AUTOCRATIC. And that's exactly what it sounds like. An autocrat is a type of dictator, and these people expect results right away. They have high expectations. They're always on top of people, and in a way, kind of they're probably ordering them around. People that are military officers are more likely to be autocratic, for instance. And this means, of course, that everybody kind of knows what the expectations are and they're forced toward some type of goal. But it also means there's less creativity and imagination used in a situation where someone like this is in charge. And it also means there's a little bit more stress on top of that. So autocratic has its upsides and downsides. Then there's what's known as laissez faire, which is spelled Laissez. And then fair is spelled Faire. And laissez faire is the exact opposite of autocratic. It's extremely hands off. It's basically giving people a vague goal to work toward and then saying, well, you're on your own and I trust you. Go ahead and do what you need to do. And once again, there are positives with this because it gives subordinates more room to work and a lot more freedom. They can imagine any type of steps they want to in any type of project that they're working on. But the downsides are, of course, is they have no idea what the expectations are. They don't have much guidance. The motivation is kind of lacking. So if you have subordinates that aren't very good at staying on task, then they're probably not going to accomplish much. And so laissez faire is the opposite of autocratic. And the third type is kind of in between. It's known as democratic because it involves someone that does have expectations and they do give input to their subordinates, but they check in occasionally. Not all the time like an autocratic person, and they're not completely vacant like someone who's laissez faire leadership style. And so they're kind of in between. They check in occasionally, they provide some guidance, and they try to slightly motivate their subordinates toward moving toward some type of goalpost. And so it gets you a little bit of the best of both worlds. Now, in every situation, of course, some people are going to be better off in one system or another. Military people are trained to be able to work in that type of environment, so they don't necessarily have a problem with autocratic. People that are highly motivated and artistic are going to be able to work best in a laissez faire system. But probably in many cases, if we just look at the average person, it's going to be that democratic place in between. And presidents or governors or mayors of towns that have lots of people that work for them or around them often choose one of these types of leadership styles. Of course, if you're the president of the United States, you're hoping that you pick a cabinet and all that can work on their own and do everything themselves. So you probably don't need to be involved as much as usual. Speaking of that, of course, there are other ways to look at leadership. Another way is passive or active. Passive leaders tend to be kind of laid back and trust that all of their subordinates will make the best decisions for them. They don't like being involved in a lot of the detail work or information. Ronald Reagan was a good example of this. He used to be an actor before he got involved in politics. He didn't know a lot about some of the specific details of governing, and so he often delegated a lot of his decision making to his subordinates. That can be good because you don't have to really put forth a lot of energy. You can take credit for things that everybody else does. And you can also say if something goes wrong, well, I didn't really know anything about that, and just pass it off onto the other people. It also means, of course, that if you're caught by a reporter or someone, for instance, if it's your workplace situation that's going to ask you a lot of questions, you're really going to have no idea what's going on. And then there's active leadership, which is the opposite. This is someone who is very involved in the process. And they do like lots of information. They like lots of reading. They like discussing things with people. And so these are kind of brainier people. In politics, we use the term wonk, W-O-N-K, because they like all that information. So, for instance, President Obama would be more like this, or George H.W. Bush, that would be Bush the Elder, or Bill Clinton. So they can be passive or active. And of course, with this one, it means it looks like they're very demanding and they're in charge and they're very involved and engaged. But of course, the downside is that if things go wrong, they're going to be held accountable. And then the last one I want to mention is negative versus positive. Some people like being in charge, some people don't like being in charge, just like there are some people that like being president. Someone who likes being in charge likes the pomp and circumstance, the fact that they're in charge of everyone has to give them respect. If they're a politician, especially president, all the different ceremonies and functions they get to go to and dress up for and socialize with other people. And Bill Clinton was very much a positive type of president. He enjoyed the presidency greatly. And so was Ronald Reagan. Being a former actor, he liked all the fancy parties and wearing a tuxedo and all that other kind of stuff. And then there's negative presidents or negative leaders. And these are people that, bless you, reluctantly don't want to go into the job. They do it because people ask them to, especially if it's politics or being president. It's because they feel some kind of civic responsibility. And so George Bush the Elder really didn't like politics or campaigning, but he did the job because he believed the country needed him, and so he agreed to do it. Same with Ulysses S. Grant. He really did not like politics at all. He hated it quite a bit, but the people asked him to run for president, and so he did twice. And he tried to avoid the White House as much as possible while he was president. Probably one of the reasons why he's rated as one of our least effective presidents. But you can be good or bad in either of these positions. You can actually be a passive negative president and still turn out to be a good one. It depends upon who you surround yourself with and how good you are at taking care of problems that pop up as they come along. So it depends upon the situation and how that person handles it. So that's all about leadership style. So make sure you have those 3 significant points